Hi, everyone. It's Marla. Welcome back to Light and Liberty. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to talk about the last couple weeks in America. I have Charlie Kirk's picture here, and we're going to touch on that. But I want to remind you that my purpose with this channel is not to bring divisiveness, but to try to bring unity. There's plenty of channels on YouTube if you want to just stick with your party line and hear about the divisiveness in the country. We've got no shortage of that. We do have a shortage of channels that are trying to bring people together and try to give a perspective of how we're the same underneath. I was listening to someone, I think it was Chase Hughes, who was talking about Charlie Kirk's assassination and how not to get caught up in that and to remember that as Americans, we have more in common than we don't. And yet the focus is always on the things that we don't share. And we see the tragic road that this kind of thinking is leading us down. It's very interesting because the last couple of weeks, the message that I was getting kind of randomly in my mind was civil war, civil war. I kept hearing that. There's a civil war coming. Again, just randomly. It wasn't even like when I was meditating. I was just doing something and that thought would creep into my mind. And I was wondering what was going on, where it was coming from, and then it became obvious a couple days ago. There is a timeline for this, and I hope that we didn't just jump on that timeline. I hope that there's still time for us to change. I hope that the last couple of weeks, when I talk about the last couple of weeks, I'm talking about Charlie Kirk's assassination. I'm talking about the girl that was murdered on the train. I'm talking about the shooting in Minneapolis of the children in the church. There's also been just the short amount of time before that or during that, we still have these riots going on. All the violence, 50 shootings in Chicago in one day. The violence coupled with the divisive language that we've all grown so accustomed to is leading us dangerously close to a place that we don't want to go unless we put the brakes on very quickly. Sometimes I look at what people are saying on both the left side and the right side, and it almost becomes like people want to take a side just because it's the opposite of what the other side is saying. I tend to see this a lot with people that have Trump derangement, and so it doesn't matter what Donald Trump says, people are going to not want that, Again, I'm not trying to be divisive, but it is something that I see. It's a perspective that I see. And it's one of those situations where how can we ever get unity if the hatred between us is so deep that no matter what the other side says, it's rejected just on some kind of principle. Like because they said it, it must be wrong, or it must not be the right thing to do, or there might be some kind of ulterior motive. The incidents that I just mentioned, though, there's multi-levels to them. If you go back in my videos here, there's a video that I did that was about looking at politics on a multi-dimensional level and how there's different layers going on. There's like what I called the third dimensional or material world level, and there's the fourth dimensional level, which is like the astral plane. And then we could talk about the fifth dimensional level, and these aren't exact. I'm just using language the best I can to help people understand what I'm talking about. The fifth dimensional would be like, how can we rise higher? And in that higher energy, we're more unified. We're able to change our perspective easier. We're in the 3D realm. We're so stuck in identity, politics, and tribalism, and we can't see outside of that frame. And that fourth dimensional realm, this is the realm where there's a lot of what we would call non-physical beings, angels, demons, and other types of creatures that we can't see with our eyes in the 3D realm. Some of us can, but we're actually seeing into the fourth dimensional realm. And those things are not acknowledged by most people. But as we look at those things, these violent acts, there's a very dark demonic energy with those. And we have to start acknowledging that. I've already talked about the school shooting and the dark energy that unleashed. That young woman that was killed on the train, that was a vicious, psychic, demonic attack on not just America, but everyone that saw that image. I don't want to show that image because of the demonic nature of it and the way that it can infiltrate our mind in insidious ways and also obviously affect our emotions. And it's really through our emotions that we get controlled. But the image was of that girl just sitting there minding her own business, and the man that killed her behind her the second before he was going to attack her. And anybody that looked at that photo could see the demonic attachment that he had. And looking at that, yes, it was a dark attack. People don't understand that. And the whole crime was on video, and there were places where you could go to witness that whole crime. Same thing with Charlie Kirk. The whole thing was caught on video. And apparently you could go on the internet and watch this, and maybe you still can. I don't search those things out because I understand that looking at that is a demonic attack. It's trauma. It's trying to create trauma in us. Now imagine these young kids in our country that are so lost and so whipped up into a political frenzy, watching these things, looking at people being murdered, and what that does to them psychologically, emotionally, mentally. And why it's a psychic attack is because that opens you up to allowing the dark energies in. Maybe allowing isn't the right words, but it creates the right conditions to invite that dark energy in. One thing that it does is it numbs us to violence and to dark energy. It's just like corn. I'm not going to say the real word because I don't want to be tagged. But that opens us up to dark forces too. To see people suffering and dying desensitizes us. Just like the other thing that I just mentioned. Shows very often women in a way that presents them as a body part rather than a human being. These things are destroying, I was going to say our country, but really they're destroying our humanity because it's not just America. And we have to start acknowledging these things and doing something about it. I don't know exactly what that is yet, but I know the first step is awakening to higher levels of consciousness to be able to see and understand these things. And that is something that we can all help with, not by beating people over the head, but by sharing from our heart, sharing from love, trying to find the people that want to hear about love and higher consciousness and spirituality. And the real reason that I came on here today was to talk about the real epidemic here. We're in a spiritual war, and we have to consider that that is our primary focus here. And when we feel like we need to be divisive, or we need to look at people that have a different perspective than us as inhuman, that they don't matter, that they're meaningless, that they are disposable, that they don't have a right to speak, that they don't have a right to live their life, we need to become aware of the dangerous cliff that we're stepping off with that mentality. Charlie Kirk said a lot of things that a lot of people didn't agree with. He wasn't someone that I listened to very much. Occasionally, I would get something about him through other people that I was listening to. Obviously, I knew the name. Yet I felt really saddened by this tragedy. Where my thoughts went when I heard about Charlie Kirk's assassination was what a shame it was to see a young man cut down in the prime of his life who was just doing his own thing. You don't have to listen to him if you don't like him. And I thought a lot about his two kids who are babies, who now aren't going to know their father, and what a shame that is. So where my thoughts went were to the humanity of Charlie Kirk. Even though I didn't know him, I saw him as a human being with hopes and dreams and a family, a brilliant mind, charismatic, and what a shame to not be able to see how his life would grow. There were a lot of other people that couldn't see his humanity, that just saw some talking points and were celebrating. I find that very disturbing, but it showed where a lot of people have lost or are dangerously close to what I'm talking about in this loss of humanity. That can't see a human being, they can only see words. And they don't think about who the person is, what their soul is. They don't see that this person has a soul. How did this happen? How did this happen to us? When I was talking to my spirit guides, kind of getting a feel for what is going on, what they shared with me is that a key part of this is to understand how we're being censored in a very big way, in multiple ways even. There are some people on both sides that are becoming radicalized that want to stop the other side from speaking. That's one of those dimensions that I'm talking about. But if we look at it multidimensionally, we could see that as like the third dimension. In the fourth dimension, there's all types of demonic and satanic energies. I won't go into all of them. One type would be demons, but there's also thought forms, and there are collective thought forms that also want to censor us, especially if we're talking about how to overcome them or how to see them. There's also, again, on the 3D level, what may be a different perspective is that there are people who want to control us, that are infiltrated by dark forces, and they have no limit to what they will do to control us. And one of the ways that they do that is by creating division and by creating censorship. Censorship will destroy our country. We need to have the ability to say whatever we want, even if someone is saying something we don't like. So that's one thing that they talked about. But they also talked about an epidemic of disease. And it's on multiple levels. It's physical, mental, spiritual, and these things are not separate. Living on this earth plane, we're so used to separating things into these little pockets. But your physical body, your mental energy, and your spiritual bodies and spiritual energy, they're all connected to each other. They affect each other. And their health is greatly impacted by the health of the other one. This is another primary issue that we have to understand. Because when we are not healthy physically, mentally, or spiritually, again, we're very open to dark forces. And I should mention emotionally too, because our emotions are at the core of all of these things. But I feel, and this is my opinion, that one of the reasons why we have a mental health crisis is because we have a spiritual crisis. I don't think we've lived in a time on earth where so many people have been spiritually bereft, have no connection to something outside of themselves. It doesn't have to be a certain religion that I'm talking about. It, as I said in my last video, it just has to be a connection to something larger than yourself, to supernatural forces, something that gives us hope, that brings us to a state of peace, that brings us into a state of love, because without these things, we will lose our sense of humanity. They honestly don't have a moral compass because they don't have that connection, that spiritual connection. A big issue here is that young people today, I see it mostly in young people, although you can see it in people of any age. But there's no hope. When you're young and idealistic and you have no hope, then that can lead you into dark paths. When there's no hope and you're searching for some answers, it's very easy to fall in the religion of politics. But the sense of hopelessness creates mental and physical illness. When you don't believe in anything, of course you don't believe in dark energy either. And if you don't have an awareness of it, if you don't believe in it, you're not going to be thinking that you could be under the influence of it. There's only a focus on materialism. But if that's our focus, we can never be satisfied. Just look at people that have endless amounts of money, and yet they don't have happiness. Because money can't buy happiness. Happiness comes from within. Political parties can't bring happiness either. Thinking that having your political party in power or having the country be under some kind of political philosophy that you believe in, I guarantee you, is not going to bring happiness. At least not lasting happiness. But these things lead to violence. And I think that unless we make some sweeping changes, that's what we have to look forward to. The attacks that we see recently as well, people on the right, not all of them, but many of them tend to have very strong sense of faith. And these attacks have been attacks on faith, making people question their faith. Because if those people have faith, they're not hopeless. And they want all of us, left and right, to be hopeless, to be silent, to be good little sheep, and just go along with what we're told. When we're under dark influences, we can become zombie-like. We aren't ourselves anymore sometimes. And it can lead to internal voices, anger, and then finally a desire to lash out. And this is happening in many ways, not just the things that I mentioned, but there are so many children being harmed by their families or by people in their families. It's very disturbing. More and more teachers are being arrested, including female teachers. I think an interesting aspect of what we're seeing happening is that women seem to be almost or equally as affected by these dark energies. Now, I know on one level that makes sense, but what I mean is traditionally we see that violence is usually committed more by men, but women are giving them a run for their money at the moment. And again, that's something to consider in our perspective of what we need to do to fix it. Our external reality is evolving faster than we are. And this is what is causing a lot of these breakdowns. In the chaos of the external world, we need spirituality more than ever to anchor us, to bring in that peace, and to guide us. If we're attached to technology 90% of our day, that's not going to be healthy for us. But if we have that spiritual connection, we're going to intuitively know that, okay, it's time to step away from this. It's time to go outside and take a walk. It's time to just sit outside and listen to the birds. It's time to meditate. It's time to pray, to get a break from all this. Or it's time to connect with another human being and have a face-to-face conversation, to hug each other, to really listen to each other. I hope that in the future we incorporate spirituality and systems of spiritual knowledge into the way we treat our physical body and our mental body and our emotions. So doctors and psychologists and therapists understand the spiritual component to us and addresses the soul and not just the body. We need to learn how to connect to our inner being and get guidance from our inner being and not just getting guidance from the loud voices around us, the media, social media. I think we can all see now how damaging these things are. And again, it's not about one side versus the other side. This is happening to both sides. So when I talk about doing something, and I said I'm not sure what that thing is yet, one thing I do know is that we can't let our voices be silenced by fear. And that we have to give each other space to say what we need to say and to follow who we want to follow and to vote for whoever we want to vote for and not demonize the other. And the way to do that is to have conversations. I have a lot of interactions in my day with people that have different beliefs than I do, whether that's spiritual or political, and I can get along with them just fine. There's no problems. And dare say, I even have love for them. It's not that hard to get along with people that have different perspectives. And when we talk about it, we can understand each other better. So I think that's the first thing that we have to do. The second thing that we have to do is be very vocal in helping people understand the spiritual component and sharing our spiritual journeys and being there to help people who might be looking for information or guidance. And we really have to stop attacking specific religions. That is not spiritual. Do all religions have good and bad parts of them? Yes. And that includes the New Age. And New Age spirituality has plenty of bad along with the good. But at least for right now, people, whatever way people can get to some higher power, needs to be honored and valued and accepted by others. It doesn't have to be your path, but let other people have that path. It's not the religion itself. It's when people get radicalized and then use religion as a banner for their radicalism. That's the problem. We have to understand that people have differences and they have different cultures, and therefore, because of their cultural differences, they may need to approach spirituality in a different way than someone that lives in another culture. And that needs to be okay for everybody, as long as there's no radicalism. And we also need to take care of ourselves in these shifting times and to not get caught up in the negative energy, especially right now. The negative energy it's not just from America, it's around the world, different forces. Things are swirling, things are coming to heads in many places because of the eclipses. And so we really need to honor ourselves and balance. And if we do find that we're emotionally caught up, then instead of lashing out, and especially lashing out on social media and creating more negative vibrations, step back, take that time to reconnect with your humanity by reconnecting with the natural world, step away from technology, and just contemplate what it is you need to understand about these situations and what you need to say. Otherwise, if we don't take that step back, then we become part of, what is creating more negativity. I know things happen and it catches us on an emotional front. It creates an emotional reaction. And the first thing we want to do is go to social media and let it out. But what if we didn't do that? What if we went within instead? Try that. And, maybe, I know if you are a spiritual person, chances are you're feeling very inwardly focused right now naturally because of the events of the world. But if there's a young person in your life, or there's someone that is struggling, or there's someone with mental health issues, reach out to them maybe and just ask if they need something, even if it's just to talk, or if they need some healing. Because we often think, well, we're empaths, so we get caught up into it. But some people don't know they're empathic, and some of their dis-ease, including mental dis-ease, is coming from being empathic and being psychic and denying it and fighting against it and resisting it. Not saying that in all cases, but I think that the way to start helping people is by reaching out to them and trying to, first of all, clear the negative energy, and then helping them with spiritual coping mechanisms. But I've been going on for quite a while now. I'm going to end this. I probably should have done several videos, but these thoughts were in my mind this morning, and I just wanted to get them out and share them. Thank you for listening. And maybe they give you some perspective or made you feel a little bit calmer in the face of all this negativity. So I'm sending you all a lot of love. And until next time, take care.